Hi, today I'm going to be explaining to you how to convert any kind of rig, any kind of armature basically that's vaguely humanoid. This can be a VRChat rig, something you made yourself, into a Rigify rig. Now, today I'm going to be showing this off with a pretty simple rig, just so we can get this done, quick and dirty. If you have any questions, just ask down below. Let's hop into Blender. Let's get into Blender. Holy headphone hair, Jesus Christ. Well, this is what you guys have to deal with now. Basically, this is what we'll get at the end of all of this. A Rigify rig, you can bounce up and down, FK arms, the eyes are rigged, you can move it around. I have this custom thing basically where you can move this jaw. And if you have a furry character, you can actually bend the tail really nicely, which is a really cool Rigify preset. And of course, if you go onto item here, you can turn on and off all of your layers. And here, this is just basic Rigify stuff. You can change this to be IK, for example. So if I do that, and then I can, yeah, look, it's now this is a little big, but we can fix that. That's not a problem. Again, this is supposed to be a quick and dirty tutorial just to get you started. It's pretty easy to figure out what to do if you know the basics of Rigify. So we're gonna hop into a fresh new project. Now I'm going to be going off of the fact that you probably know Blender already. So how do we turn this into something usable and actually animatable, because you really don't want to have everything be FK. How are you gonna do anything with this? You know what I mean? It's pretty simple, really. First, you'll need to download a plugin called Expy-Kit, EXPY. This basically enables us to generate an armature, a Metarig, that Rigify recognizes as a thing it can actually make a rig out of, right? So we have XP now, XPY, this, you have this here, you have it. You just want to put in all the bones that you have into this, as many as possible. The more work you do here, the less work you have to do down the line, because we have to tinker with this quite a lot. So this is pretty simple, just like here, you put in your head, shoulder. If you have a shoulder, I don't have a shoulder, so I'm just gonna skip the shoulder. I'm gonna put in the arm bone, which is just the upper arm here, and forearm is just forearm, hand is hand. I'm just keep this up. Now, for example, with this rig, we don't have really the classic neck/spine structure you would have. We have 2 neck bones and only 2 spine bones. So I'm gonna actually put in neck 2 as my main neck, which is this upper bit, because that is closest to the head. And then my spine 2 is going to be the next bone, which is the neck 1. Oh, sorry, neck 1. Then this is going to be my chest, which is just the chest bone. This is spine 1. And then my hips are going to be my hips. This doesn't have to be completely filled out, just as much as you have, as much as your rig allows you to, just put in everything you can. So at some point, you're going to have all of this filled out. I set it as a preset. You should also do that when you're done. You can also put in your face if you want to, or your fingers, stuff like that. This rig doesn't have fingers or really a face, so I'm skipping those steps. Next, what you want to do is go into pose mode, right click, and extract Metarig. Don't forget to have one of the bones selected. Then here, rig type, you want to select your preset that you saved, and look, we have a Metarig now. Yay! So what you do now, I usually just go into object mode and I move this out of the way, so it's not in the way. We can close this now. We don't need XPY anymore. And you might see this is a little funky. So Rigify is a little annoying. It really cares about semantics and structure. So what we can do here, we can remove the hands here, for example. I don't have fingers. In case you do have fingers, you can just move them there and whatever. These are the shoulders. Now you might remember we didn't have shoulder bones, but I need to keep these because if I don't have the starting link of the chain, Rigify will shit itself and it doesn't know what to do anymore when you generate a rig. So I'm gonna enable mirroring here so I don't have to move them individually. I'm gonna move them kind of right into place where this roughly would be if this was a proper rig. And then I delete these breastbones. My avatar doesn't have, or my model doesn't have any boobies, so I can get rid of that. And then I'm just gonna roughly align this. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. Rigify is pretty smart. It'll figure it out. Just kind of align that. Now you might notice we have this funky business going on. Do not remove any of these bones in case, like me, you have some bones missing here. In case you don't have bones missing here, your avatar has more bones or your model has more bones. You want to keep these, just make sure everything is aligned, which it is not in my case. So I'll just, do this and I will align it accordingly. And there we go. This should be aligned now, right? So like that. I'm not gonna be moving this around. This is staying where it is pretty much, just so it doesn't break. Rigify really likes breaking itself if everything isn't the way it wants it to be. I'll do a few more adjustments, like adjusting these toe bones. You don't really want to delete these because it just doesn't know what to do if you do get rid of some of the bones. So yeah, there you go. This is kind of cleaned up now. Now what you might have noticed is we're missing our eye controls, and here I'm missing my jaw, and I'm also missing the tail because EXPY doesn't actually support that really. I mean, it does support eyes and a jaw, but I don't trust it with this, whatever. Now you also might have noticed that we have one too many bones here in the neck. Don't delete bones like this. It likes having more bones sometimes. Just keep them there. It'll figure it out when you convert it, okay? What we do now, pretty simple actually. We need to add all the missing things here. This is where Rigify comes into play. So first, let's add the tail, for example. If you have a furry character, you just go on this little data icon, this running guy. You go to the Rigify section, and then we go into samples, because Rigify is really nice, and it already has a lot of presets we can just slap on. And this is what you want to be working with all the time, because this is set up for Rigify and it works, and if you do anything your way, it'll probably break. So let's just get a basic tail here, add sample, and you might have noticed, yay, we have a tail now. So what we do is we scale it up and we align it with the tail on our model. This is pretty simple, guys. You can do it. I believe in you. Just like, do this, do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just kind of, the weights need to make sense when it gets transferred, Yeah, and then we select the base bone of the tail and our lowest spine bone. Control P, keep offset to make sure that's connected. Cool. We have a tail now. Good job, guys. Okay, so now what we might want to add is the eyes, for example. This rig does it a little differently than what you might encounter if you're doing VRChat, for example. The eyes are, you control with this bone, which is pretty standard. And then this is like the reference bone, so it basically knows what to do and where to go. Now, what you might see in a VRChat rig, for example, is you might have two eye bones, and then there won't be a central control bone to control them. So what you'll have to do in that case is you will go into your rig in edit mode, and you will add a, scroll up here, you will add a basic super copy, right? You will add this, and you will put this in front of your eyes, a little further out, so your two eye bones might be like here, and then you will parent these two bones to this bone so you can control them, right? So in case your rig doesn't have a central control bone or whatever to control the eyes, you just add it, you parent the two eyes to that bone, and you're good to go. So what I'm gonna do now is add these bones to this rig, right? What you do is you just add a super copy. I have to add two in this case because there's two bones. So we have these two bones here now, and then we drag it up, right? And then we just align them roughly, above the bones. Again, your rig might be different. Just like make sure every bone is accounted for. Just make sure you have every bone there that needs to be there, right? And then, I'm just gonna parent this bone to the head bone, keep offset, bone inside, also keep offset. There we go, cool. These bones are added now. And then what we're also missing is the jawbone. So again, pretty simple. We just add another super copy. We go up and we align it, right, like that. And then we just Control P, parent it. I think that's all the bones in this rig. So our next step is to rename these bones, because Rigify does not know what to do with the bones if they don't have the same names as they have here. So if you check, this is, for example, called the jaw. So I'm gonna select my jawbone. I'm gonna go into the little bone icon. I'm gonna type in jaw, not all caps. Make sure you don't capitalize your things. Rigify will actually shit itself. Just call that jaw. And then this is called eyes, I'm pretty sure. And this one here is called eye ref. And like, for example, here with the tail, this is the tail, tail 001 and tail 002. You want to use this naming scheme when it comes to the bones, because Rigify just doesn't know what bone comes after which if you don't rename them correctly to have the point and then 002 naming structure. So I'm actually gonna go into this bone here, and I'm gonna call this the tail. This is going to be the tail dot 001, and this is going to be the tail dot 002. Now everything should be renamed correctly, is what you would think. But if I now click here and regenerate rig, we do get a rig, and you might notice it moves around, but a few things are broken. You might see the tail doesn't bend, the jaw doesn't jaw, but the eyes do eye. That's pretty cool. So what happened is Rigify needs to know that these bones are supposed to deform the mesh. The best way I found to actually fix your rig not deforming your mesh is to go onto your main rig here. As you might have noticed, some of these bones have this def and this dash in front of it, which, as far as I'm aware, just tells Rigify that this bone is supposed to deform the mesh. So what I'm going to do is I'll copy this def bit and the dash, I'll go to the tail here, and I'll just slap it in front. It's pretty simple, really. I'm just gonna tell it it's a deformation bone. Also going to do that for the jaw here. I'm gonna tell it again, deformation. You might also have to do this for the eyes. My eyes are not deforming the mesh in this case, so I don't have to do that. Now, if I regenerate rig, theoretically, yeah, there you go. See, our tail is deforming the mesh. You did it, yay! And my jaw is also deforming the mesh. Cool. You might think you're done at this point, but another issue you might encounter: the weight painting being broken. Now, how do we fix this? Well, if you remember from earlier, we added extra bones that are not in the original rig, which means the weight painting can get transferred. So what we have to do is we have to add, at the very least, this here hip bone to this rig. We go in, we extrude a bone. The orientation doesn't really matter here, and then we just tell it that it's the spine. I'm pretty sure in this case it's the spine, so I'm just gonna call it, def spine. Cool. Then we have to actually add the weight painting for it. So we select this bone. See, it's not weight painting yet. Go into weight paint, radius. And actually what I'm gonna do first is I will select my faces here that I want to weight paint, so I don't get anything I don't want to get. Quick and dirty. This doesn't really matter. Now I can go into weight paint, and I can select this here mode, radius, and just gotta slap it on there. If you have this kind of like weight paint issue because you had to add extra bones or whatever, just make sure the weight painting makes kind of sense. I think this is fine enough for this case. So now I go into here, regenerate rig, and theoretically, yeah, see, our weight painting is not quite fixed. Wait, let me, and again, just few adjustments here and there. Generate rig. There we go. Cool. See? We have fixed our weight painting issue with the extra bones. So if you have any like extra bits that weren't rigged in the original, like maybe a ear or something, you need to add an extra bone for it, just make sure it's weight painted, basically. So I'm gonna go back now because it's still not done yet. We can actually refine this a little bit by going on the extra bones, for example, that we added. And if you go into this bone icon and you go into pose mode, we can actually change how the widget looks on the rig. So for example, for this bone, jaw bone, I'm gonna select the jaw widget. For this eye bone, I'm gonna select a cube. This can stay a circle. And what we can also do, we can go into pose mode and we can select these bones, go here, and then we can assign what collection they're in like a little menu on the side here in Rigify. We can change like in which collection it is. So you might have noticed our tail is in the face collection, which is something we don't want. So I'm gonna go on remove, I'm gonna select torso, assign. I also don't need the face primary or secondary For me, this rig doesn't really need it. You know, this jaw, yeah, that can be in the face, and the eyes can also be in the face collection. Cool. So this should have cleaned it up a little bit. Again, I can regenerate my rig. And this is what it looks like so far. So again, it works, but oh, what's this? See, the arms don't bend the right way. Now, there's an easy fix for this. You just go into edit mode on your other rig, and usually the forearm bone or like the elbow, whatever's in the middle, you just move it a little back. Make sure that change happens on both sides, so work with the symmetry button here. Just move it back a little bit, and then, you know, generate the rig again. And see, now it bends the correct way. Yay, we did it. You can also kind of do this if you do have fingers. You might have to like rotate the bones a bunch so they bend the correct way. Just like be aware of that. Don't forget this step. You might have to like rotate the bones here, or like change the bone roll here. If I go into item, you can change the bone roll and like which way it's rotated. If like things aren't bending the right way, just make sure you change the rotation of the bone, basically, right? And that should fix it. Or like if it's bending backwards or whatever, you might have to move it like a little back, a little forward, just like these little adjustments, and you're pretty much good to go. Now is I can turn off all the tweaks and stuff I don't need. Arms I like being an FK. Let me just turn this off. Legs can be IK. And then, you know, I want to switch between IK, FK. I just do this. Here we go. And yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the final result here. You know, as you can see, I have my IK legs. My jaw is fully jawy. My eyes also follow the bits. My head follows that. You know, the shoulders also work despite me not having shoulder bones before. Be careful. Just a few pointers. You don't want to delete these heel bones. The toes might be fine, but it can't actually make the legs if you delete the heels. So just keep that there. In general, you want to mess as little with the thing it gives you, the Metarig, as possible, because otherwise Rigify might freak out. If you need to add any ears or any like dangly bits, it's the same process as with the jaw or like the eyes here. You just add a basic super copy and then you rename the bone to whatever it's supposed to be. Just make sure it's parented to the right thing, it has the right name, don't use capitals, and you're good to go, really. Yeah, this is the rig. Now, what I like to do with my rigs, first of all, we can move this to the center just so that it's there. I'm gonna go Object, Apply, Transforms, and what I like to do, in case you ever need to edit this rig, you edit this Metarig, and then you just click Regenerate. So the best way to just keep a backup of this, basically, I make a new collection. I call this the, let's say, Cowboy Rig. You know, let me just put that there. Let me put that there. And then we put this in the Cowboy Rig. This is supposed to be on the armature. There we go. And then this Metarig, I'm gonna put it in its own collection called the Backup. Right? Metarig. Now, I have this backup that I can hide. And in case I ever update this rig or this model and I need to change anything, I can just unhide this, edit here, this gets changed, we're good to go, right? Also, you know, if you ever need to append this rig into a scene, you just go File, Append, and then you go in Collections and you append the entire rig collection. So just make sure you keep the rig in its own collection so you can just easily append it between projects. And honestly, I think that's it. I mean, you're good to go. You can make basically anything you want now with any rig, including VRChat or anything you made yourself, and you get all nice professional controls you wouldn't get otherwise. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If there's anything else you'd like to know about an animation workflow, I'm here, and I can make more videos. Bye!